Hi everyone, my name is Gustav.
My name is David, and both of us are co-owners of the Paradise Group.
You're completely right about that. And today we're going to talk about how you should manage your money and the bad and good ways, or not that much of the good ways, but mostly the bad ways you can spend your money. And also different habits you can have to spend your money bad, and just the lifestyle you live if you're spending a bad money. So David, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, basically what we're going to be covering here are four secret topics, right? Which is basically outlining what you should not do. Right? Because at the end of the day, really keeping proper finances is less about the good habits and more about avoiding the bad habits. So, Gustav, right, go take the first one.
Sure.
Bad spending.
Now, bad spending. In my opinion, bad spending could be simply put as something you spend and you don't get any money back off. And also stuff which you could spend less money on and you will get the same result. A good example of that is, for example, designer clothes. Most of the designer clothes are the same quality, a little bit higher, or in some cases a little bit lower than the alternative, which is 10 times cheaper. Now, if I may ask you this, when you're spending your money on, for example, the new Dior Jordans, which cost like $6,000, is this shoe 60 times as good as a shoe for $100? Now, in my opinion, it isn't. And if you look into the shoe, it is nothing that makes it magical or special, which is actually worth $7,000. The only reason is because it has clout and other people want it. It's simply a source of supply and demand. And that's basically what I think is bad spending. But if you want to elaborate a little bit, David, please go for it.
Yeah, I think bad spending without going and talking about some of the other items here is that really buying these useless things that aren't going to provide you any real value. Right, trying to buy something for clout, right? The that
Yeah.
commonly thrown around word that is you're buying clout, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. You just you're giving away and throwing away your future for a fucking pair of shoes.
Yeah. And a
Crazy.
lot of people go broke trying to look rich, and that's actually a big problem in today's society. The rich people don't go broke looking rich because they are rich, but the poor people wants to feel a sense of that they're actually wealthy themselves, and instead of working on themselves to actually become wealthy, they try to go a simple way of buying expensive clothes so they look richer than they actually are. So another take on that is that don't spend money on looking rich. Spend your money on getting rich. Do you think that's a good summary, David?
I'd 100% agree with you. Don't spend your money on looking rich. Spend your money on trying to become rich or just living a better lifestyle, of course. I mean, even I've seen countless times where you have a poor family, right? They're relatively poor. They don't have amazing finances. That have quite a few laptops or quite a few iPads or quite a few air, what the hell are they called, AirPods, right? And they're doing this because they're spending all of their wealth, right? Going towards one good thing. They're spending all of their money to one good thing because they want that status symbol. They want that one thing to make them feel better about themselves instead of spreading out that spending just to overall improve their quality of life. So, if I may, Gustav, take this from here and move on to the second point, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, go for it.
Next is poor planning. A lot of people simply do not plan when it comes to spending money, which sounds and it sounds like an absolutely crazy thing, right? I think Gustav, I think you saw an amazing example of this, where this one girl came up to you, um, and she asked you to pay her rent.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. Yeah, basically, during a recruiting process, I've had countless people trying to ask me if they can live there for free. And the weird part is girls are actually messaging us and asking if they for like can cook with us, like cook for us and clean for us, and that in that way they can live for free. Now, what they probably don't understand is that them cooking and cleaning doesn't make it a good investment for me to take it into the place. And if I asked her why she couldn't just pay the rent, she said she was poor. And in my opinion, instead of trying to go on Discord and beg for money or try to live with someone else, you should maybe try to change your financial status, try to plan a better job, and don't plan on becoming someone's wife in a Western country or something like that. Like, do more real planning before you start begging. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you on that. I mean, though going and doing that is a legitimate option,
Yeah.
the way to go about it is not to go and ask two random guys you just met to go and give you whatever few $100 to pay your rent. That was very bizarre.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was thinking to myself afterwards, I'm like, how in the world do you get yourself in that type of situation? Right? How? Because either, right, she she obviously knows how much her rent is. She knows the amount, whatever number. And she knows how much she makes. So it's either that she willingly knew that she spent more than the amount she had, or she bought a location or bought an apartment that was too expensive, right? One of the best
Yeah, completely
ways
right.
to avoid getting yourselves in those ridiculous and sticky situations is very simply knowing how much money do I make? How much is my rent going to cost? How much am I going to spend? Just knowing those numbers and keeping within those amounts is going to completely stop you from getting into really, really horrible situations. Speaking of horrible situations, let's go on to the next one. Um, Christ, feel free to go for it anytime.
Yeah, you're gonna take that
What
away,
the
the
fuck?
thing?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having some issues right now. Pardon me? But it was bad habits, to clarify. Bad habits we were talking about. There it is, bad habits. Talk about it.
Yeah. So the next one is bad habits. And generally speaking, the reason why most people are poor is because they have bad habits. And basically, the planning and the bad spending and everything like that are just reactions of them having bad habits. Because you don't get into a situation where you don't plan. If you have habits which structure your life to think or to actually take real responsibility for what you're doing. Now, yeah, exactly like David is writing here. You don't spend all your money on Starbucks if you have good habits. You don't spend all your money on GCs. You don't go out eating out every day. And more generally on habits, is that it isn't only about making money. It's also about your physical health, how you're developing as a human being. And most people have very many habits which are very bad. And if I'm not mistaken, do you think the numbers are right there, David? I've searched it up a couple of times, and to create a new habit, it takes about 22 days of dedication, where you do the habit every day.
Yep, I think
Now,
around that time,
if
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So if you take that as an example, it only takes 22 days to do a good habit, but it takes a like a lot shorter time to create a bad one, in my opinion. If you want to like start going to the gym, it would probably take 22 days for you to create that habit. But if you start eating McDonald's every day, it wouldn't take you very long to do that every day, you know? Because
Yes,
it's
and
the most
I
comfortable thing to do.
I agree with you on that. And at the end of the day, it's really just trying to control your impulses. And of course, things like Starbucks, Yeezys, eating out, right? Personally, I would never buy Yeezys. But I think the important idea is that, yes, once you reach a adequate level of wealth and you're able to afford these various types of things, that's fine, right? But for many people, it simply does not make sense, and you're going to drive yourself into poor situations if you keep going and buying these things that you can't afford. Make a plan and cut out things that you do not need.
Yeah,
I
and
think,
try to make good habits which actually push you forward in your goals. Let's say, for example, reading. Get a habit of reading 30 minutes every day. Get a habit of, for example, working out every day. Get a habit of studying financial people. Try to become more financially literate. Get a habit of that. It's so easy to create good habits, but so few people do them actually. Because the hard part about this is not about getting the habit in. The hard part is like going out your comfort zone and actually trying.
yeah. And if I may add one more point on there, obviously, Gustav was right that a reading is a really amazing thing, but just to clarify here for people who want to integrate that into their life, um, please do not view reading as work. It's a useful thing that can give you a lot of knowledge, right? At the end of the day, the best way you can integrate reading into your life is to find media in your life and replace it with reading instead, so it's more productive. I think you agree
Yeah,
with me on that, right, Gustav?
Yeah, and also when you try to create a habit, let's say for example you want to run every day, don't start doing it with running like 10 miles the first time, because then you'll think it's too boring and you'll stop doing it. You should do it in progressive steps so it gradually becomes harder. Just like David just wrote out as a curve. You should not start at the top and then slowly plummet down and end the habit. You should start off easy, so you keep going the habit. For example, if you're going to the gym, start with, for example, 30 minutes. You go pretty light, then you increase and increase and increase, and gradually you'll become better. And you can increase it with your learning curve, and you don't have to be like completely exhausted the first time you got running. So your brain like connects running with something that's horrible for you. When you're exhausted, you're feeling very tired, lactic acid is in your body. So try to do it gradually and don't start out too hard. Do you think that's a decent way to put it, David?
I 100% agree with you on that. That's a really good way to really begin and continue good habits. Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, right? It's less about starting a habit; it's more about keeping it.
Yeah, exactly. And many people think about having a habit for a year, like I'm gonna go to the gym for a year. But you should always think about having the habit for 30 years in front of your time, because then you'll actually go for it, you know?
And in all honesty, I think that really the idea here, because you see, for example, always when New Year's, you see the gym, right? You see it's
Yeah,
always
oof,
full.
yeah.
Honestly, my best advice is just forget about the days and just think about this day and the next. Don't think about the big end goal. Think about just the next
And
step you
don't
can take.
think I'm gonna start on the New Year's Eve. Just think I'm gonna start today. If you feel like you wanna start, don't wait until you have like that perfect day to
Yeah,
start.
and just
Just go out and do it right now, because it's never be a perfect time when you should start. The
keep
best
going.
time is always today.
Keep going. Don't get analytical. Just
Yeah,
try,
exactly.
and something is better than nothing. Also, our next topic, debit and really just, especially credit card debt. Gustav, I think you have a good idea. I think you understand, and maybe you can tell some people about this. You know how many people have fucking horrible credit card debt?
Yeah, I know. But I live in Sweden. We don't really use credit card here that much. So I think your understanding of credit cards is a little bit better than me. But I think debt in general, I'm quite good at.
Yes, and if I may go over this, because a lot of people here are European and such, but in America specifically, we have a really interesting system where there are many different credit cards, and they provide different cash backs and different perks. And of course, you have very expensive credit cards that do various different things and get you free flights on planes and this and that and that. And it can be something similar to debt, right? Because that's what kind of it is that there can be really good debt and there can be bad debt. And it's the exact same thing with American credit cards. It can give a really, really good opportunity to people who use it well. And it can be really, really bad to people who use it poorly. And I see um, really two main pitfalls to people who use credit cards that end them that put them into really, really poor situations. First things first is when you drastically increase the amount of money you make. You're living, right? You're living really, really well. You're maintaining these different points that me and Gustav have talked about. But then boom, you get a new job and you're making significantly more money, right? So now in your mind, you think that you can spend more money because you're making more money. And that's kind of obvious, right? Because you can. Because of the credit card, it's so easy to push it up, right? Like, for example, you make $10 a day and you spend $10 a day, right? Now you're living at the bare minimum. But some people, they change to $100 a day. And you know what happens to their spending? Is they
They spend
overestimate the
$100 a day.
increase. They overestimate the increase. And they start spending $200 a day.
Yeah. And what you see most of these basketball stars and a lot of lotto winners, they
Yes.
start like when they have a lot of poor economical state. They spend like you said here. They have $10 an hour. They spend at $10 an hour, and they do the same with the new income. They don't adjust it and spend the same they did when they earned less. They adjust the new income as their new spending. So their goal is basically just to waste all the money. You should try to maintain your old income, like how much you spend, and you should do it with your new one, because then you'll keep and pocket the difference. And in my opinion, David, do you also believe in this, that they should always save some money before they like spend some money,
Oh,
so you don't
yes,
put
very
aside the
much
money at
so.
like the end of the month.
Very, very true.
Yeah, so at the first of the month, just put away your money, and then you don't spend that. Because in the end of the month, it can be quite easy to like, yeah, I'm gonna buy a coffee here and I'm gonna buy a little McDonald's here, and the money can fly away in an instant.
Yeah, I think it's especially very important for people who aren't in very big, very large situations financially to really look at the specific transaction by transaction, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
for these NBA players, it's more of a broad sense, right? If they broadly introduce these things into their lives, but for people who are lower financially, it's really about transaction by transaction, and this kind of leads into the second point: is that with credit
Hey
cards,
David,
yeah.
when you're done with this, let me cover a point about NBA players. I have a like, fun statistic up here.
Oh yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we'll cover that in 1 second. Credit cards and poor planning go hand in hand, right? Spend now, pay later, right? And once again, it can be good, but it can be bad. A credit card is a really, really easy way for you to make really good planning choices and really, really bad planning choices. Just be aware when you use a credit card, always have some sort of plan. But anyway, besides that, let's go over Gustav's
The
very
fun
funny
statistic here.
statistic. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so basically, an NBA player makes an average about 30 to 40 million a year, and I'm looking at statistic here. You want to guess real quick, David, of how many of them go bankrupt, like the first 5 years after retirement,
I think it's
when they're
50.
making such absurd amount of
I've
sums of
heard the
money?
statistic before. I think around 40%.
No, it's 60 to 65% to go broke in 5 years' time after retirement.
Yeah, they declare financial bankruptcy 60 to 65% in the first 5 years, and probably later on it's even more. And
Exactly.
that's when you're making 30 to 40 on average $1 million per year.
And that comes to the question, how the hell do they spend all that money? And how can they be so stupid? When you have $40 million a year, how don't you think you could save $1 million at least? Now that basically gets into the to basically education and also a little bit of a social problem. Most of them are grown up in poverty and they don't really understand how the financial system works. So they think, or they don't really think, that's the problem, how
Yeah,
they should spend their money.
yeah, they have no thought into the future. They're sitting there going, "Oh, I'm making all this money. I'm making all this money. I'm gonna spend all this money." Right before I was making $10 an hour, and I spent $10 an hour, and I was barely surviving. The thing that they forget is that there's going to be a point in the future where they don't make this much money, right? Then they get dropped off, and they still have the same spending habits. They don't decrease it, and then boom, they declare bankruptcy. That.
Yeah, and they also many times get like hustled from their managers, or they take in bad people who actually steal their money. But
Oh
I
yes.
don't want to go in too much in detail for that because it's not really that relevant to the
Yeah, it's person
topic.
per person. It depends. Make smart decisions, obviously.
Yeah,
But honestly, I think that's all we have to cover today. Let's try to make this one relatively just light to eat.
thanks as well.
All right.
Well, thank you for listening to us, and I hope you learned something new.
If you're interested in the Paradise Group and the stuff we talk about, obviously like and subscribe. Feel free to DM us if you're interested in our group. Make sure work hard, enjoy your life, and talk to you later. See you there.
Yeah, see ya.